And then this was the best. Stephen Carr, who was a business analyst and a business writer for the New York Times, I had no idea who he was because he was standing outside my restaurant, again, while I was doing the build-out, and you scrap it together in the beginning. Like, my first build-out, like, I was staining my own floors. Like, you put it together on a shoestring budget, and you just get open as fast as you can, because if not, it's just money going out with that register not ringing.
Yep.
And Stephen Carr was sitting outside. I thought he was homeless, like, no joke. And he was smoking a cigarette, and his ash was this long, and I was like, do you need food? And he and I started talking again. I had no idea the first time I met him, and he left. And then weeks later, I was open, and this woman was sitting there. I had my daughter on my hip, my youngest, and I was pouring coffee. I was running around like an asshole, to be honest with you. I was not ready for... I'd never managed a restaurant a day in my life. Mm-hmm. I was a server. I had no business opening a restaurant in hindsight.
But you did it. You
but I was like,
forward.
I want to do this. I think I can do it. So I was holding my daughter. I was pouring coffee, and I see this woman taking notes, and I was like, I don't know what that's about. And then afterwards, my ex came, grabbed my daughter, and then she came up to me, and she was like, can I talk to you? I'm so-and-so from the New York Times. We're going to put you in the Quick Bites. And I was like, how did you wind up here? Like, this was so out of my wheelhouse. And Stephen Carr apparently told her about this place and told her about me. And at 35, when you have a bunch of young kids, you're a big deal to be like going out on your own. At least you were 16 years ago.
You still are to this day.
Yeah, but at 51, they're like, oh, nice, right? At 35, they're like, how are you going to do it? This is amazing, you know? And what I loved about Tammy was that she did, it wasn't really a review, it was just everything positive. And even better was that she wrote in the fact that I had my daughter on my hip.
Yeah, she gave a picture, a snapshot of what was going on.
Totally. It completely changed my life.
Exploded it. Dude, we all have the best time ever to start a small business.
If I'm not going to be 100% in, I'm not going to do it.
Come on, man, just be yourself.
Yeah,
and just show up as yourself.
If you don't realize what I'm really about, I'm about freedom, family, and my country. Amy, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the backyard. Cheers.
Cheers.
I've really enjoyed hanging out, having a couple drinks prior to us hopping on.
I know. I'm so glad that I got here early.
Regular person, like everybody I grew up with. Passionate about your business, which is thriving and doing
Indeed.
very well.
Thank you.
I have to be very honest, though. I've never been in, which is my fault.
So I have to be honest. While I'm slightly insulted, it actually makes me excited because that means that I haven't saturated the market yet.
Yes.
So if you haven't been
There's room to grow.
Yeah. So we're good.
But my wife has many times, as well as her sister, who's from Long Island, and you have a friend from Long Island. And I hear nothing but great things about your restaurant. When we first chopped it up, for those of you who don't know, when we talk to people coming on the Fireside, we kind of vet them. Instantly, I was like, Amy seems cool. I saw you and your friend at Charlie's not too long ago, and I was like, I'm excited to have Amy on now. And I'm glad that you're here. And for those people who are in your world or on your social media who are going to watch this, I want them to understand what Fireside is all about. And it was about turning around and helping the next guy or girl in line launch a business, become an entrepreneur, and really not get into the rat race, not be owned by corporate greed.
Yep.
And you're a representation of that. You have an amazing restaurant in Asbury. I know you have scaled that up to 3 now.
Yeah.
And you
Asbury was the second.
Asbury was second. And I know you want to go far beyond that.
Yeah.
And that's why you're here, and I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy, so thank you for being here.
Thank you again for having me.
So I'm going to kind of chronologically walk through your life. I want to get to know Amy. I want people to understand your story, who you were, right?
Boy.
Everybody
Buckle
has different paths, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay, because they either walked a similar path or they walked a parallel path. And if you were able to do it and be successful and live the life that you desire, and you were just in Belize and you're going to Italy, and I hear all these amazing stories, and I love that stuff because that's what me and my wife enjoy doing, making memories and traveling. And that person on the other end of this camera is able to say, hey, if Amy could do it, and Ryan can do it, and Evan can do it, I can do it too. So, born in Bergen County.
Yep, born in Jersey City, and then we're quickly moved to Rutherford, New Jersey.
Tell me about your childhood quick.
Youngest of 6 kids, and probably the biggest thing that shaped me was parents. One was a Democrat, one was a Republican. That was when that was okay, and it was actually brilliant. And so glad that I had that experience.
Do you think that goes on? And we're gonna go down this path real quick. Do you think that goes on anymore? Like,
I actually have
I don't
friends
think
of
it
mine
can.
that I've spoken to, and they're like, on dating sites, and they're like, I will not date a Republican, or I will not date. I'm like, that's just ridiculous, but
Yeah.
all right.
yeah, too much animosity caused by the media, which we should all see through.
Yeah, it's absurd. We can go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, we could go down
but-
any rabbit hole you want.
So yeah,
This is Fireside America.
it's fitting. So, born in Jersey City, moved to Rutherford, I think almost immediately. I don't know that I actually lived in Jersey City for more than maybe 11 months. So when you went from Jersey City to Rutherford, you were going to the country because it was the first place
That's kind of a funny thought process.
it was the country.
Is there any woods even in?
No, but there's trees.
Yeah, a couple
And-
trees.
yeah.
Like
So-
outskirts of the stadium and the wetlands.
Yeah, so that's East Rutherford.
Yeah.
Let's not confuse the two, because Rutherford is also a dry town. So it's really, really small. It's a dry town, and it's just your typical suburb of Manhattan at the time. Pretty conservative area growing up. Again, youngest of 6 kids, 4 boys, my sister, then myself, and 14 age difference.
Wow.
And my parents split when I was 6, which the only reason to bring that up is because my brothers had a huge role in raising
your life,
me.
yeah.
Huge. So many of my musical influences and my sports and everything that I've done my entire life really, definitely got some stuff from my mom and my dad, but I got a ton from my brothers.
It's so funny that you bring that up because I don't mean to seem cliche, but I could tell that you had brothers. No, but I
Slightly a tomboy growing up, and by slightly I mean full on. My dad, when I was in 4th grade, got me a shirt. When you went to the places in like Myrtle Beach and they would do the iron-on shirts, and he got me a shirt that said, "Boy, my A blank blank, I'm a girl," because everybody would be like, "Oh my God, Bob, this is your youngest son," and he'd be like, "Or my daughter." I had a Dorothy Hamill haircut. I was the first to be picked on every school yard pick.
what was your like top sport?
Well, when I was in like 3rd and 4th grade, it was playground football. And then once I got older, it was softball, and I love dodgeball.
Were you any good?
I think we really should bring it back. Actually,
We could do it in the backyard. And
it
film.
would settle a lot of scores. But eventually, I played softball and then basketball. And unfortunately, I don't think I was 5'2" when I graduated high school. And in Rutherford, you're really close to Kearney and Harrison, and you're in like this area that the girls are already 6 feet by the time you're in high school. So then I liked boys and other
Went a different route.
extracurriculars.
Yeah.
I went a different route.
Yep.
So sports kind of like fell off, but I was a major tomboy growing up. I was definitely the prodigy of 4 brothers.
So a big correlation that I like to bring together for people who are watching is athletes and success, whether it be an entrepreneur and leader in sales, or somebody super driven to obtain their own financial goals, or just win in their industry as a business owner. So I could tell that you're competitive and you want to do well, and obviously you have that gene to have the success that you and your partner in Toast has.
Yep.
But it was something in you as a kid that you saw. Did you see anything that was like, I want to be an entrepreneur? Or did you identify with anything that said, I'm not going to go the traditional route?
Definitely not. And I can tell you that when I was growing up, that word entrepreneur, aside of on the cover of a magazine, and that was under National Geographic and under Forbes magazine, that was the only time I ever even saw that word. When I was in college, there weren't entrepreneurial majors. That wasn't even a thing. The one thing I remember saying from a very young age was that I wanted to be independently wealthy. That's all I knew. My dad was a small business owner. He was in warehousing and transportation, and his start was crazy. He was like a one-man band at 13, 14 years old and used to steal his dad's truck. And he knew that there was bakeries in Jersey City that couldn't house their flour anymore. And he was like, I'll take it to my garage. And that grew into like a $30 million warehousing
How did you know
and
that at
transportation.
14?
I don't know how he knew it, but I mean, I have pictures of him in
Dad's still alive?
No, he passed away about 9 years ago. But he was like, his father was off the boat from Italy. he was, first generation, and he did recycling before recycling was a thing. Also in Jersey City.
That's funny. Italians and recycling.
Well, my dad's name was Ralph Russo, and he went by Bob Russo for a reason.
Super Irish.
And not mafia related at all. And so I just grew up in these, like, what I considered blue collar, right? My dad, even when we went to restaurants, he would get his coffee in a paper cup because he was like, that's what I'm used to, even if we were dining in. So he was like really a truck driver by nature, then got into warehousing, was in the National Guard, met a partner that had education and knew how to like bring it all together. So he partnered with him, and my brother actually still runs that company, and it's 60 plus years old. It's probably about 69 years old
shit,
now.
what's the name of it?
Port Jersey Transportation.
Port Jersey. I think
Yeah.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, they're pretty big, and they had a resurgence during COVID. I mean, if there's a plus out of COVID, my brother literally turned that business around.
Yeah.
So.
That's awesome. And so you do have that in your bloodline.
Yeah, but again, I just looked at it as we're small business owners, right?
Yeah, but that was an entrepreneur.
Totally, but
Yeah.
it wasn't.
It wasn't a
that
term.
word wasn't.
It wasn't a term.
Used back then.
Small business owner is a great term too.
Yeah, and that's what self-employed. My dad
Yeah.
used to just tell everybody he was self-employed, but he did like everything. My dad went through a phase. By the time I was born, or by the time I was 7 or 8 years old, he was pretty well established. But my brothers have a very different, upbringing. Being that there's 14 years, and he sold mattresses and he sold Christmas trees in the parking lots, and
He was grinding.
He was grinding, and he would do literally anything. And he also had some really funny, like, kind of shady shit go down as well. Like, I remember going with him, and he'd be like, we're going to go pick up rent from this guy. I'm like, you own that property? He's like, not really, but he thinks I do. I was like, well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that he didn't, it was like on the other side of the fence
Well, you
of
never
one
seen
of
The
his...
Sopranos?
I have seen The Sopranos. And I raised my kids in Bloomfield, so Holston's, where they shot the end scene, it was literally our place.
James Gandolfini has a beautiful house out here his family still owns. He was
really?
super charitable after Sandy, rest in peace. But yeah, he was always down here. Loved the shore, a block from where we're shooting this podcast.
It's a great show.
Yeah, amazing show.
Yeah.
I tried to get my wife to rewatch it. Actually, a Long Island girl has never seen it.
Really?
Never seen it. She says I start to watch it and I all suddenly, think I like the 30% of me that's Italian comes out.
You start saying Christopher
Yeah.
and things like that. Because I know I do.
That was a cool time that era lived through, and to be able
No
to hustle
doubt.
like that and steal your dad's truck and go do something. But that, whether you realize it or not, I'm sure you do now.
Oh, it totally shaped me.
Yeah, that shaped you.
Absolutely. And actually, when my dad passed away, and from like diagnosis to death, it was like 3 weeks. So we didn't have a lot of time. He was 78. We were hoping to get to 79, and it just all happened really quick. But the one thing that so many of the people that came to visit, to the wake, to whatever, and even still, because my dad eventually wound up in the restaurant business, so I still run into some people like the guy who, sells me my dishwasher chemicals. They're like, he was the last self-made man. And I'm like, not the last, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
That generation,
Different cats.
yeah, totally different work ethics and everything else. My dad didn't get past 8th grade, yet he, developed this amazing
Your dad and I have some things in common. I was kicked out in the 8th grade.
Were you 8th?
Kicked out in the 8th grade to an alternative program called Pathways. And from there on out, it was really just babysitting. They were not teaching us anything. No disrespect, Mr. McKnight. But, I was kicked out
I think
in the
you
8th
did all
grade.
right.
Yeah, I could somehow formulate sentences. Last names I bastardize all the time. And what's the other one, guys? Charcuterie board?
Charcuterie.
Or charcuterie. Do you have those at the toast?
We do not. We're not that trendy.
Yeah, that's too trendy.
We hit the classics.
That's too trendy for Asbury.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have a charcuterie board at home, but definitely not at the restaurant.
So, moving your story along and fast tracking it, you had mentioned to me that you actually never finished high school.
I didn't. So this is a coming out party. So I have 3 kids, 18 to 23, and the only person that I've told this to is my son so far, and it was very apropos because he went to college for a year. It wasn't for him. He was feeling horrible about himself. So I was like, listen, this is something you don't know, but this isn't the end of your story. This is just the beginning.
Yeah.
And so I told him, but the girls, well, now I can tell them because now they're 18. They're now in college. I just wanted them to finish high school because I do have to say that I mean, it was kind of a baller move. I didn't know it was at the time. I didn't really have a choice. I had too many days missing, and they were like, you're going to have to repeat or go to summer school. And I was like, that's just not happening. And I was young. I was still only like 16 and a half in my senior year. And I remember going to my dad, and I was like, listen, so I'm quitting school. And he just looked at me. He's like, do you have a plan? And I was like, I do. Because I knew that my dad was totally solution-based. Like, I couldn't go to him and be like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I'm quitting school. So he said, do you have a plan? I said, I actually do. So Rutherford's right next to Passaic. Passaic had a different demographic. They had a lot of kids dropping out. So they actually created a program where you can get your high school diploma, not a GED. Like, it would actually be a diploma. You could basically go and it was a GED, but they made you feel nice because they gave you a nice certificate.
They needed state and federal funding.
Exactly. So I was like, I got this. I can go do this. And I wound up, and you go in and you take tests, you know, English, math, science, whatever it is. Like, and I just went in one day after another because I wasn't not smart. I just hated school. I hated the way that they did it. My brothers were dating my teachers. Like, they're doing bong hits on the weekends, and then teaching me English and getting me in trouble. I'm like, this isn't working out for me. So
nowadays, teachers are doing much worse things, and I won't go there. But so I prefer that what your brothers had going on.
Well, they had that going on.
I want to touch on that real quick, though.
Oh, I can't wait.
Because high school. No, I want to talk about high school. And listen, you should strive to graduate if you can. I hated school. I didn't sit still well. I still don't sit still well. And it was something that I was never interested in. And I never understood that. Like, give me something I'm interested in. You can give me something that I can hyper-focus on. I'll retain it extremely fast. And I'll be able to regurgitate it in a really simplistic way fairly quick. And I think that's intelligence. And a lot of times we're judging intelligence based on this general broad stroke of high school. That would be like judging a fish's intelligence on its ability to climb a tree.
100%.
Right? So
it's broken.
It's bullshit.
It's a
so
broken system. I mean, if we look back, and I've unfortunately didn't have the wherewithal when my kids were younger to say, like, this isn't probably the best way. I did.
Did you feel bad? Maybe potentially encourage them not to do it?
Oh, I actually felt like a complete poser at times. When I was like, no, go to this school, go to the best school,
it's the best
get great
thing for
grades.
you, let's go private.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the system's broken, and if you really research it at all, and you look at like when our school system was developed.
What's broken about it? The books for 5-year-olds to do sexual things?
You know what? That's even, I'm glad that there's something controversial again, but they developed the system how many years ago? I believe it was Rockefeller, actually, that kind of like had a big thing of developing the United States school system.
Why do you think Rockefeller had a skin in the game to develop an education system?
To create sheep.
To create workers?
That's it, right? So you have to create people that sit down, be quiet, learn like this, and
Why do you think your dad wasn't that guy?
No, my dad was definitely not that guy.
He came from overseas?
Well, my dad was born here.
Oh, he was?
It
I
was
thought you said
his parents, yeah. So my dad was born here, and I think by 8th grade, he was asked to leave, is the story.
I say I had a mutual disagreement, and we both parted ways mutually.
Yeah, I'm not kidding you. It was probably 2 years before he passed away until I found out actually what happened. He was asked to leave, but it was because he was selling fireworks, right? And my dad was born in like 1934. So
he was an entrepreneur.
He was an entrepreneur. He absolutely was.
Was he going to PA to get him?
Probably.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Let's get him off the port.
A lot of things fell off the back of a truck,
yeah.
Like including every Jordache jeans that I ever had from like 7th to 9th grade.
Including cars,
you name it. It fell off the back of a truck.
Hey, it happens.
So those were the good days.
Bad truck drivers.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe the robots would be better.
Oh.
So
are we going to go down that road too?
Well, we talked about that.
We better stay chronological, or else we're going to be
all... No, listen. We can go all different
paths. We're going to be bobbing and weaving.
I could bob and weave, and I'll bring us back. Don't worry. So you don't finish high school.
I don't.
You go and get this high school diploma in Passaic. What did you do from there?
The funniest thing, probably the thing that no parent should ever do. A friend of mine from high school moved to California. She lived in Whittier. If anybody knows,
no one should ever move to California. That is funny.
Well, if you know Whittier, California, it's also like legitimately next to Compton. She was...
Safe place.
Yeah, she was Puerto Rican American, and I said to my dad, I'm going to go visit Laura out in California, and he was like, sounds great, because at that point, my dad just didn't want to see me like in his face every single day, and I didn't have much of a plan aside of getting my diploma. And so I went out there for nearly 2 months, and I got into a lot of trouble. Like, I was going into parties that had metal detectors back in 1989, and
Were you strapping back
going
then?
to Tijuana. I was not. I didn't even think to strap. I didn't even think of how dangerous it was. If my kids did what I did then, I'd have a problem with it.
That sounded like me going to a boat race in Camden, and we were walking in Nikki's bar, Nikki Tolucci.
Yeah.
We were walking in Nikki's bar, and they're like, "We're gonna go through the back door and avoid the
Exactly.
whatever the hell they call it,
The metal
detectors."
detector.
And I'm like, I don't know if we should be in here.
Right. Well, I didn't actually even think that like far ahead when I was 17. Then I'm like driving down to San Diego, crossing into Tijuana, praying to God that I get back alive.
Tijuana's safe.
Oh, yeah, amazing. Especially then. So that's what I did for 2 months. Came back, went to Fire Island, and that's when I got the call that started this conversation of,
Fire Island's cool.
you need to get your ass home and figure out what you're going to do next. And I
Your
was
dad
like,
was pissed. He was like, all right, you had enough fun time to get to work.
he was so pissed.
So what did you do at that point?
So I enrolled in that college, but before that, there was a very Pavlovian thing that went on with my dad. And I, again, didn't realize it until I was probably 40. From the time I was 9, I had a job. I delivered newspapers. I worked at the roller rink. I worked as a dishwasher at one of the local bars in Lyndhurst. Like, to the point,
You
like
were
I
hustling.
was hustling. And I didn't even realize at the time, but if I had a job, I never had to ask my dad for anything. Or if I did ask him, it was a very quick yes, right? So, can I have movie money, right? $4 to go down to the local movie theater. Absolutely. The minute I didn't have a job, but again, it was never spoken about, and I never realized it until I was older. I didn't have a job. Those
Wow.
hands were gone.
Yeah.
There was nothing offered. Can I have movie money? Get a job. I was like, got it. So again, very Pavlovian. If I worked, I didn't even need to use it.
So let me interject. Do you think that that's coming back full circle now? Because I believe in the generation that I'm in now, people in their mid-30s are going to bring back savage kids.
Absolutely.
That, like, my kids will not have shit. I'll have way more wealth than anybody in my family has ever obtained. I probably already have that beyond what my parents did. And I love my parents. They had an extremely hard work ethic, and they took themselves out of what they thought was a bad area and moved us down here. And my kid will work for everything that he has. Stupid little
Absolutely.
things. Hey, you got a HESH truck, buddy? Hey, you got to go clean up the room with mommy. And he's only 3. You know, by the time he's 7, he's going to be hanging out in this backyard cleaning up, you know, the beer cans or the waters or the cameras. I want my kids to understand that nothing is handed to you in this fucking world. And that's what your dad was trying to teach you.
Yeah, and he absolutely did. And he instilled it. But, you know, again, I'm one of 6 kids, and like 3 of us got it and 3 of us didn't. Right? So you can do as much as you want and lay the foundation as much as you want. You still don't know what you're going to get on the other side of
So
it.
what did the other 3 do?
Like, really, we want to talk about this?
No.
They didn't work as hard.
You don't have to go in detail. They weren't of the same
They
mindset.
weren't, no. So there's 3 of us that were small business owners or are. 2 of us still
your dad
are.
Your dad was 50%. That's
So my
a pretty
brother,
good rate of return.
My brother was, that is a good rate of return, now that you think about it. And then 3 of them just kind of like just rogue. You know, I have a sister who, you know, didn't really follow that path, let's just say that.
Yeah.
But 2 of my brothers, one owned car washes. He was actually a mechanic, a high-low mechanic for my dad for a really long time. And then my first foray into entrepreneurship or small business ownership was I actually opened a liquor store and a gas station on the same property. And my brother ran the gas station, and one of my other brothers and I ran the liquor store. And I left my corporate life that I was in for about 6 years, and believe it or not, I loved it.
What was that?
It was in fragrance marketing and advertising for like the back of house fragrance houses. So like we fragranced everything from
Remember
deodorant
IFF?
to... It was a competitor of IFF,
Yeah.
Jivet on Roar.
We raced that guy's boat, and he gave us a brand new Dolly diesel to drive the boat.
Oh,
down
really?
To a boat race in Destin, Florida. Do you remember the CEO's name?
No, of IFF or Jivet
Yeah,
on Roar?
of IFF.
No, I don't.
Anyway, it was really reckless trip, but a lot of fun.
It was a great industry,
Yeah.
and we can talk
He
about
seemed to
that.
be doing well.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was what I did after college. Where was I? Oh, the liquor
So you
store.
went to
and
the liquor
gas
store.
station.
Where
So,
was this?
in Bayonne, New Jersey.
Bayonne, all right.
Yeah, so there was dirt. My dad was in business in Jersey City, lived in Bayonne at the time, and he was like, hey, I have this opportunity. I was in the fragrance industry, loving my job, by the way, like loving it. And my two brothers are pretty blue collar. And my dad was like, I think you should do this together. Like, you've got like that other side, like you know how to work a computer, and they've got the grind. Well, at least my one brother did, my brother John. And so we did it together. And then, you know, that saying like everything's for sale. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I feel that way exactly anymore, but back then I definitely did. And somebody walked into the liquor store and said like, is this place for sale? And I was being a real smart ass. I was pregnant with my second kid, like lugging them around. I was driving a forklift around in the liquor store. It was like 8,000 square feet. And I said, everything's for sale.
I was going to say, is this a liquor warehouse?
Yeah, it was pretty big.
Yeah.
For back then, it was huge. And it was 1997, 90. So I sold it we opened in 97. I sold it in 2002 because this guy randomly said, is this for sale? And I was, total wise ass answer was everything's for sale. And he came back with an offer that I couldn't refuse. Plus I was running it with one of my brothers that I was like, we're either going to continue to have a relationship or a business.
Yeah.
Both couldn't happen
Yeah.
at the same time.
Family and business at times could be extremely difficult.
Brutal. No, I would never do it again.
Yeah.
I mean, it can work out, I'm sure, for some people, but in my dynamic, it just didn't work. Mm-hmm. And so I sold the liquor store, and then a few years later, we wound up selling the gas station as well. And then I became a property owner, and that actually kept
So you
me.
guys retained the property.
Yep. And we only sold the businesses, which again,
Do you still own any of that property?
I own all of it.
Oh, you never let go of any of it?
Nope.
No
So I have
shit.
it now since 1997.
What is it now?
It's still a liquor store and a gas station, and we collect rent. And
It's still a liquor store and a gas station?
Yep.
Do you know the Hudak Pharmacy?
I don't.
They're Bayonne people.
Hudak?
Yeah,
don't.
Hudak. I think they started originally in Bayonne. Anyway, his house down here in Bayhead. Great dude, Brian, son-in-law.
That Bayonne connection can run deep.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to meet him. But yeah, so I then stayed home for 5 years and had my second and my third kid. And then it was time to get back to work. And I was like, I don't want to go back to the fragrance industry, even though I absolutely loved it. But you're in at 7, you're home at 11, you're traveling all over the place, which was amazing when you're not married and you don't have kids and you're traveling on somebody else's Amex.
Yeah.
But then I was
Meeting
like,
new people, having fun,
it
drinks.
was amazing.
Yeah.
It really, really was so fun because it's so closely connected to the fashion industry. And back then I was like, it matters what you smell like. And I'm like, now it doesn't matter at all what you smell
Kenneth
like.
Cole Black I'm wearing tonight, if you were wondering.
Oh, okay. Very good. I'm surprised I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, you should have smelt it.
There's sometimes that actually that industry haunts me because I'm like, are you wearing Angel?
Yeah.
And they're like, no.
Weirdo.
And then, yeah, I do freak people out sometimes.
So-
it's my party trick.
But you said something that I think that America went backwards on. It was like, women need to go get big corporate jobs and women deserve this and that. And I want every woman to chase down everything that they desire. But in my opinion, they don't put enough emphasis on the mom owning a business who has the right freedom and flexibility to raise their kid and dictate their own hours. And as a business owner and as an entrepreneur, in my opinion, and I'm just some fucking guy with a podcast, I think that you have so much more flexibility as a mom in business
Absolutely.
than working for some big corporate structure.
There's no doubt about it. So when I was going to go back into the industry, my kids were 2, 4, and 7. And I mean the industry of like the workforce. And kids were 2, 4, and 7. And I was like, that fragrance industry isn't going to do it because I'm never going to be able to raise my kids in it. I would never see them. And I wanted 6 kids. I stopped at 3 because the
Jesus.
relationship kind of took
Maybe your next marriage.
a turn. Yeah, no, thank you. Don't jinx me like that. So, gosh, you just totally threw me off. Thanks for that. So anyway, they were 2, 4, and 7, and I was like, I wanted to be in the restaurant business because I actually, again, youngest of 6, but also my family, the whole Italian-American Jersey thing.
It's a lot.
Well, we also,
I love, though.
we celebrated a lot. You know, we had the Sunday big dinner thing, and who's playing the accordion and the tambourine. Like,
God forbid you don't show up to Sunday dinner or the 1-year-old's birthday party. You're out for life.
Exactly, and doing the Tarantelle at the weddings and doing the whole thing. So, but I loved it. I loved that aspect of it. My grandmother lived in the same town as us growing up. I spent a ton of time there, and I was like, well, I want to be in the restaurant business because eventually, so just fast forward, my dad went from being in warehousing and transportation that he stayed in until he passed away. He was like the backer, like the silent partner in a bunch of restaurants. So from the time I was about 9, I was around the restaurant industry a lot. Plus, we had big company picnics. I mean, there was times where my dad had 300, 350 employees. And so we had these big company picnics, and there was all this social life, and there was
A lot of relationships, too.
It was
built
awesome.
there.
Totally awesome. But I was like, I would love to be in the restaurant business. I don't want
Dad
to
sounds
be...
like a boss.
He was awesome. But I didn't want to do nights, didn't want to do weekends and holidays, and raise the kids. And I was actually at a restaurant in Long Branch one day with my dad, and we were talking about what I was going to do, and he's like, sounds good, sounds good, sounds good. And then I looked down at the placemat, and the place was open from 8 to 4, and I was like, ding, 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 ding. Like, wait a second, I can do this. Plus, I used to go skiing. I was born and raised, like, going up to Vernon Valley and Vermont. And
We're in Vermont.
Pico
Yeah,
and Killington.
I love Vermont.
Yeah.
Manchester is actually the most recent little place that my wife and I discovered.
It's awesome.
Awesome. You know, not far from Killington.
No, it's a great town.
Yeah.
It's got like that one big farm. I can't remember the name of it.
They have a bunch of farms. They have the Equinox golf course there. They have a ton of bars.
Yeah, it's amazing. So my brother, who's the youngest of the boys, he and I were skiing all the time in Jersey and Hunter, and so he went up to Vermont, so I followed him up to Vermont. And we'd always go to these like amazing, like big New England breakfast houses, right? You go to Sugar and Spice, you go to this place. Amazing.
Country stores.
Right, like just awesome. And you know, these like sugar houses kind of a thing, that doing their own maple syrup and this, that, and the other thing. And so when it came back to like my kids were 2, 4, and 7, I'm like, I should open a restaurant. My dad also was in the diner business, but these big breakfasts that we get when we go away all the time, whether it's, you know, go to Vermont, go down to Florida.
It was different. It hit different.
It totally was different. It was just elevated. I'm like, I think I can do this. And I thought to myself, if I can market it right? Because I was...
How old were you at this time?
35.
35, and you had 3 kids.
3 kids, yep.
Sold the liquor.
Sold the
Just keeping
liquor
people
store
on
when I
track
was
here.
30.
Still retained the real estate. Were you getting dividends and rent,
I was
or was that
getting
your
passive
dad's?
income, which was really quite amazing. So my dad did lend us some of the money to buy the property and build the buildings, and then we quickly, like,
Paid him back.
his loans were, you can have it, but I want it back, right?
Yeah.
So those were the first paybacks.
I know guys like your dad.
What was that?
I know guys like your dad.
Yeah, you could have it, but you're going to pay me back.
Yeah.
And it was great because you just knew that that's
You didn't
where
have it
went
without
first.
him.
No, absolutely. So just thought to myself, we need to have something like this in like the Bloomfield, Montclair area, and had a ton of places that we kicked the tires on, had a ton of places that we were, you know, we even put offers in, we got it, then during due diligence, for whatever reason, it didn't pan out. It just fell through. And so finally a neighbor of mine who had recently moved to the same block as I was, had no kids, but she was kind of like my people. Her name was Erica. Shout out to Erica. She was also a realtor. And she's like, I think I might have found a great place. And this is when LoopNet was like brand new, right? And
Now if it hits LoopNet, it's no go.
It's 2 for 1 sushi is what it is.
Yeah.
So she showed me this place, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And we had already been under contract with like 3 other places and did, you know, soil testing and this, that, and the other thing. And everything was just falling apart. And I had the concept, sort of. I just knew that I was going to bring like that New England big breakfast thing to New Jersey. I was going to combine.
So real quick, for people who have never been up to that New England, like I've been to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is awesome.
Same thing.
Kennebunkport,
Yep.
Maine, Portland, Maine, you know, all over, you know, Vermont, all over, you know, the Cape Cod, you know, Nantucket. My wife and I love that area, and breakfast is our favorite meal. You know, you can't really drink
Even
at
though
breakfast.
you've never been to Toast, but whatever, go ahead.
Well, I said breakfast in general is our favorite meal. Explain what the New England breakfast is all about and what it really meant to you. And you briefly touched on it, but like really get into detail for those who don't understand that and haven't been up there.
So if you're a skier, or if you're just like a 17 to 22-year-old that's going up and you're renting the house at Hunter, or you're renting a place at...
Snowmobiling, drinking bourbon by the fire pit, whatever.
Exactly.
Mountains in the background.
Like, you do breakfast and you do dinner, right? You don't really do a real lunch because you're spending like $15 on mac and cheese at the lodge, right?
Liquid lunch usually.
Or that, or blackberry brandy was my like go-to. Blackberry brandy and Sprite was my go-to on the mountain. But
Blackberry brandy and Sprite?
yeah, it was
Would you have a bellyache?
It was delicious. If you haven't had it, then don't knock it, is all I'm going to say.
It just sounds like...
Do we have blackberry brandy here?
We might actually. My father-in-law likes that when his stomach's upset.
See? Well, drink it with some Sprite. It's delicious. So the New England, I feel like New England breakfast houses combine like the sugar shacks of Canada and the New Jersey diner, and they have a baby. So you kind of get, you can get a cheesesteak at 7 a.m., but you're not really going for that. You're going for these like big, they're heavy.
Yeah, sausage.
And everything
real food.
I was going to say, and there's no hollandaise sauce.
Yeah.
There's like, it's covered in cheddar or, Vermont cheese of some sort. Their Eggs Benedict is really not Eggs Benedict. The Menden Miler was this, their famous dish at this place, Sugar and Spice, that I went to. And I realized, I was like, this is Eggs Benedict with cheddar cheese on top of it, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And the hams are just like, you're not using, you're using Canadian bacon, but that's not like the American version. They're just giant breakfasts that you should be
and I always
rolling out of.
I always said to myself, am I feeling I love this breakfast because I'm just looking at mountains in the backdrop or the people? Funny story about Vermont, we went up to Woodstock, Vermont. And right outside Woodstock is owned by the Rockefellers. They donated it to the state of Vermont years ago. Beautiful property. If you've never been up there, it's awesome. Again, right next to Killington. About 2 miles out was a small little inn. And right next door to it was this country store. And for 5 days, my wife and I went up there. They allowed me to light a fire in the room. That is definitely dangerous, not allowed in New Jersey. And I went over to this country store, had this amazing breakfast, and I said to myself, like, is this just like amazing because I'm in Vermont with these different people? So I go up to pay, and I'm talking to this lady. She's like, where are you from? I'm like, oh, Jersey. She's like, where in Jersey? I said, oh, down the shore. She goes, I'm from Manasquan. I grew up there my whole entire life. And I'm like, oh, so I guess it's not the people. It's just a vibe.
It
the
is
food.
a vibe. It's definitely a different vibe. And like those country stores, like I grew up with general stores, and you would go, they're amazing. Right, you can get a Pinky Ball, like some Haagen-Dazs,
an old gun,
a kite, and some amazing breakfast all in one location. I'm like, sign me up.
I'm in.
So I actually tried to do a little bit of that, and if you think about it, it's kind of like Cracker Barrel, right? The difference is it's not owned by a corporation. And that's why Cracker Barrel 100 years ago used to be awesome, and now it's crap, right? So now you go in there and you're just like,
most woke things go to shit.
That's unfortunately... Like, I feel like the way that those New England breakfast houses do it, they do it so right because maybe they have 3 or 4, but that's it. Like, and the 3 or 4 are run by the cousins.
Well, it's made with love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's no bullshit. There's no pretense. They don't give a crap about Instagram likes.
No.
Right? They just do what they do. The employees alone, right? You go into these places and everybody has a story.
Yep.
There's not...
And they're happy to tell you about what to do, and the town, and the food.
Absolutely.
And
they're like an ambassador to the area every single time. It's
Lake Placid's like that a lot, too. And Lake Placid has gotten a little...
So, interestingly enough, I've never been to Lake Placid, but I've been asked if I've been to Lake Placid at least 5 times in the last 7 months.
Go stay at Mirror Lake Inn. Seriously, next winter, stay at Mirror Lake Inn. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You can go get some cocktails right on the lake.
I've never been. I can't wait.
Which is a part of Mirror Lake Inn. But I remember having a breakfast up there. We walk in, again, picturesque, over the ice, mountains in the backdrop. We walk in, this guy's telling us, he was so awesome, telling us all about the area. And I was asking about snowmobiles. I'm a big motorized guy. I'm not really a skier or a snowboarder. My wife is. And the first thing he said to me, he's like, the best drink on the menu is bourbon orange smash. And I'm like, sold.
Yes, sign me up.
I love bourbon. Yep. I love orange juice. Usually orange juice and vodka, right? And just that same feel up there as well. Same exact feel.
Yeah, they're just like, they're
different.
They're American.
Yeah.
Like that's like the embodiment of it.
Yeah.
They are country folk. They're simple. They have their ways, and they're not woke, right?
Yeah.
They're just like, They do.
A lot of people think
do.
Vermont's like a liberal state, but they still have a right to carry. They defer to the federal law, so they have no not that we're talking guns, but you
Right.
talk about liberal states like a California or Jersey, although Jersey just approved the right to carry because it's it's our constitutional right. Up there, they're not caught up in that shit, and they never have been. Even still to this day, like I said, we were in Manchester
They're
9
not.
months ago.
They are like by the university in Burlington and places like that.
Yeah, where Bernie is.
Right. But outside of there, I find it the same way. I find it like
Very
actually,
country.
it's liberating.
You ever think about moving up there?
No, never, not anymore.
Yeah, you just vacation and
I used to love it, and honestly, when I was in the fragrance industry and it was like that whole rat race, I used to go to the mountains and go skiing and come back with because my big thing, did concept development, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like creative concept development for all these like major companies.
I know where you're going. I'm excited about this.
And I used to go to the mountains, and all of a sudden I'd be like, kind of like the writer's block, and I would go skiing for a day, an hour, a weekend, and I would come back and I would be like firing on every single cylinder.
That is me.
And again, Pavlovian, you realize that when you get away from it all and you get
Clear head.
it's amazing the ideas that I would come back with. And literally I would come back with copy in my head just from having 4 hours on a mountain.
Yep.
And so it became, my refuge from everything else that
That
was
is
coming
mine.
back.
My dream for my wife and I is to pretty shortly here build a cabin up in the Catskills or Vermont. We love Vermont, but the Catskills is just such a stone throw away.
Yeah.
It's quick. We're gonna have kids in a pod or school, depending on what the hell they do with all these chemicals that they want to inject. That's for a different day. But I go up there and I become a different person. Like
Totally.
I really do.
And it's funny because at that phase of my life, I really needed it, right? And when the kids were younger, all my kids are, snowboarders. Run them into the ground,
Yep.
right? Like, so it's winter. All of a sudden, you can't go to the park. You can't play soccer. They're not outside playing basketball.
You're forced to just...
And I was like, let's go, right?
Yep.
So we'll get them out on the mountain there, and they'll go snowshoeing, and they'll do this and that. And then and honestly, the last 15 years is probably the least amount of time that I've spent in the outdoors. But instead, I turned to hiking, and I turned to just taking walks, and I'm near the beach, and I'm near the water now.
Mm-hmm.
But it all really does have the same effect. You have to step back, and well, at least if outdoorsy things are your thing, it really does make a huge difference.
The reason I spent more time on you describing all that is I want the people who are watching, who have a restaurant concept, to understand the passion, love, deep thought, and the critical thinking that went into Toast. And that, I need to get there this weekend, and I will, I promise you. Because
We'll
everything
see.
that you described is what I and my wife love, and again, she already loves Toast, but that's amazing. And you took that passion and all those experiences and said, how do I duplicate that in Jersey? So moving the story forward, when did you launch your first store and where was it?
So I was 35. It was 2007. It was in Montclair. So I was living in Bloomfield at the time, raising my kids there. And I thought to myself, if I opened in this area, and I was looking, like I said, there was a bunch of things that fell through. So I was in Bloomfield, I was in Montclair, but I wanted to be pretty close to home. And so we found this great spot in Montclair, and we opened, and I thought to myself, if I give a decent product, which I knew I could do, because I'm a foodie, again, big social family. So I was like, this is amazing. I'm going to be able to have a restaurant, be social, see the people that I want to see anyway.
And I don't have to stay there till 2 a.m.
And I don't have to stay there till 2 a.m. and I don't have to clean up after myself because I'm going to have a staff.
Yep.
At least that's what you think in the beginning, which, by the way, you are the staff.
Yeah. Always.
Forever. And still now, 16 years later. So I thought, you have young kids. I had somebody that was in Taekwondo. I had another kid that was, we went to a church. We did this, we did that. And I thought, if everybody that knows either me or my kids tries me once, I give them a great experience, they tell 2 friends, it literally was like Vidal Sassoon.
Experience.
That's it.
You got an experience when you came here today.
I did. I can't wait to come back. I'm going to come just when you're filming other people.
You said that, right? and I hope that we put out a great product for people to learn from and enjoy great stories like yours. But the experience is everything. You can have so-so food, but if you have great service and you create a memorable environment, it's everything. And that doesn't mean just a restaurant world. It could be a podcast. It could be your financial services. It could be a law firm that's different. It could be a coffee shop. An experience is everything, and that's a nugget for you who is watching this show, whether it be your guests that are going to tune in or the people that watch on a weekly basis. Create the experience. An older gentleman told me that. I was in a very successful mastermind that I was invited to as a young guy, and I went up to this gentleman, and he created the greatest experience in the financial services, private jets everywhere, and all this awesome stuff. And he goes, Ryan, I'm not that smart. I just create good experiences, and he like took a shot and walked away from me, and that stuck with me forever. So sorry to jump in, but experiences.
It's so true.
Is
like
everything.
I didn't create like 2 eggs on a plate with toast and potatoes.
Yeah.
But I created an environment where if you're 6 or you're 65 and you come in there, you're going to get awesome service. And like, again, I grew up in the diner industry, or in the diner world, right? And it was that or these New England breakfast houses. And when I worked in college, I worked for a more fine dining restaurant. And I was like, we don't give here in New Jersey at the time, we didn't give breakfast the same respect as far as the service and everything behind it as they did, right? You have diner waitresses that are like, are you guys ready to order? And like throwing saltines across the table. I loved every second of it, don't get me wrong. Exactly. They reeked like smoke. They were like flicking their cigarette butt out while you're walking in the door. I'm like, oh shit, I got a table. And I was like, I'm gonna elevate this so that you're gonna get the same experience from a service point of view that you would at a great restaurant, not a pretentious restaurant, but people that were like silent service, right? You're attentive enough, but you also know when to walk away because you're going in there to talk to your wife, your kids, your family, your boys. You're not in there to like hear the entire life story of people.
At times, my wife and I are. I want to engage. I talk to my wife.
Fine line.
Yeah, there is, but I talk to my wife every single day.
Right.
So we really enjoy, and I don't say this because I don't want to talk to my wife at the restaurant. We're raising kids.
Right.
We're busy. It's go, go, go. But I want to talk to the bartender. I want to talk to the waitress or waiter.
Well, I think you touched on this earlier too when we were just chatting before. Like I always sit at the bar, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So Chris, my boyfriend, and I, who you've met, we sit at the
Boyfriend?
I'm gonna beat you. So it's funny because we sit at the bar all the time, and I don't think that was something that he did prior to me. And when we first started dating, I think we had one date that we sat at a table, and then after that, I was like, "Do you mind if we sit at the bar?" And there's so many reasons for that, right? Like you get to engage with the bartender, you get to engage with the people next to you, and there are so many people. Like we were just at the Bonnie Reed. Well, we were there tonight, but that's neither here nor there. But we were there Sunday. And the people next to us, they're like, oh my God, we met you. You're Toast. We're going to Italy. You were in Italy.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, we're old friends. We've met them one time.
You're so interested in other stories. That's what my wife and I like.
It's great. So in that case, absolutely. But you have also had those experiences where you go to a restaurant and the server's telling you their life story and you're like,
well, they're
oh my
brain
God.
dumping on you.
Can I please?
Johnny left me.
I just need my pancakes. I just need my pancakes. And coffee first, and then
I think it's genuine people and good people. Whoever it is, the communication back and forth is good. So you launched Montclair. How long did you have that?
So I had it for 4 years, and honestly,
big hit.
Huge, bigger than I'd ever anticipated. I went into this with one restaurant in my head. That was it.
So for a small diner, deli type of person looking to go in that world, what were your revenues 3 years in?
So I have to tell you, our revenues were pretty much exactly where they were for 5 years, almost immediately. So we opened in May, so that first 6 months I don't even count. But by our first year, we were at 1.5, and then it was 1.6, 1.65, 1.7, and that's kind of
same space.
Yeah.
How did you feel you were growing the revenues? Were you maximizing tables? Were you turning them more?
Turning them quickly, and the other thing is luck is luck, sort of. We did get very lucky in this sense. We opened in a town, and I didn't know this prior because I was not in this world. Montclair, I had no idea how media heavy it was. A ton of people that work in news and at the New York Times and in the city, they lived in Montclair. Again, I didn't know that. That wasn't the world that I came from. And I, at that time, was living in Bloomfield, which Bloomfield is just the next town over. But at that time, there was Upper Montclair, and then Bloomfield. And that Bloomfield was the other white meat kind of a thing. And I was doing the build out, And two things happened. Steve Adubato, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's like a more local, but I think he's on like some Fox and NBC stuff. He's a local newscaster, and he walked in and he recognized me just from like kids and stuff in town. And he was like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "It's my place I'm building." He was like, "No kidding. I'll come back in a few months and check you out." Right.
Yeah.
And then this was the best. Stephen Carr, who was a business analyst and a business writer for the New York Times, I had no idea who he was because he was standing outside my restaurant, again, while I was doing the build-out, and you scrap it together in the beginning. Like, my first build-out, like, I was staining my own floors. Like, you put it together on a shoestring budget, and you just get open as fast as you can, because if not, it's just money going out with that register not ringing.
Yep.
And Stephen Carr was sitting outside. I thought he was homeless, like, no joke. And he was smoking a cigarette, and his ash was this long, and I was like, "Do you need food?" And he and I started talking again. I had no idea the first time I met him, and he left. And then weeks later, I was open, and this woman was sitting there. I had my daughter on my hip, my youngest, and I was pouring coffee. I was running around like an asshole, to be honest with you. I was not ready for. I'd never managed a restaurant a day in my life. Mm-hmm. I was a server. I had no business opening a restaurant in hindsight.
But you did it. You
but I was like,
forward.
I want to do this. I think I can do it. So I was holding my daughter. I was pouring coffee, and I see this woman taking notes, and I was like, I don't know what that's about. And then afterwards, my ex came, grabbed my daughter, and then she came up to me, and she was like, "Can I talk to you? I'm so-and-so from the New York Times. We're going to put you in the Quick Bites." And I was like, "How did you wind up here?" Like, this was so out of my wheelhouse. And Stephen Carr apparently told her about this place and told her about me. And at 35, when you have a bunch of young kids, you're a big deal to be like going out on your own. At least you were 16 years ago.
You still are to this day.
Yeah, but at 51, they're like, "Oh, nice," right? At 35, they're like, "How are you going to do it? This is amazing," you know? And what I loved about Tammy was that it wasn't really a review. It was just everything positive. And even better was that she wrote in the fact that I had my daughter on my hip.
Yeah, she gave a picture, a snapshot of what was going on.
Totally. It completely changed my life.
Exploded it.
Yep. So from May to August, we were chugging along and we were doing okay. And then that article ran, and it was little, teeny tiny. And that was it. I had 45-minute waits.
That was the
waits.
takeoff phase of Toast.
Absolutely.
We have a great hit. Media gives you a lot of love. That helped you send Montclair. How long have you had Montclair? And it's still open today, correct?
Yes. So I've had it since 2007. So we're going to be coming up on, it's May soon.
Yeah.
So we're going to hit our 16th anniversary.
Wow. And still in the same exact spot?
Same exact spot, and has honestly, like, we've been flat here or there, but for the most part, we opened in 2007. Everybody knows what happened in 2008 with the market. And honestly, I was so in it at that point, like, I wasn't paying attention to what was going on in the rest of the world. I was under a rock of, you're the barista, you're the line cook, you're just in it, right? You're raising kids and you're going to work.
Gas pedals down to the floor.
That's it. I'm not...
Take a lesson. It's a fake recession right now. Make sure your foot is on the gas pedal.
It has to be. And we were, I guess, fortunate because a lot of people weren't going out for big dinners anymore, but they still found us very affordable.
Yeah, they want to get out with their family, do something.
And you could have this amazing experience at brunch still and feel really special and feel like you did something special with you and your family. So we weren't really...
Are you willing to share the revenues of that? Starting out at 1.5, 1.6. You don't have to go into detail, but
no, it's fine. I mean, it's not too much greater than that now. But again,
we have the same,
for breakfast, you're still like 1.8.
Yeah.
But 1.8, almost 9 at its highest. It's pretty significant for any
big
restaurant.
margins on breakfast.
Never mind something that's selling no liquor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where we're open from 8 to 2 Monday to Friday. 7:30 to 3 on the weekends, so you have your nights, you can still raise your kids. So there was this whole, we started talking about that earlier, like things that fit your lifestyle type of a thing. That, for me, fit my lifestyle.
Well, you should build, I think a lot of people who go into small business or entrepreneurship, and definitely people in the corporate life, it's like, I want to go make X, I want to have a house here, and they kind of build their life after their work because they're chasing that income. And as a business owner and an entrepreneur, what you're able to do and what you should be doing is, I want to live here. I want to have this many hours. I want to be this flexible. And then you build the work life after that. And that seems that's something you were doing.
Yeah, 100%. I built the restaurant and the type of restaurant that I built because I had young kids.
Yep.
And I knew that I could do both. Was it exhausting? 1,000%. Work-life balance, for the most part, in the very beginning, is kind of bullshit.
Yeah. It's counterbalance.
Yeah, as many things as I could have missed because I did it the way that I did it. Like, I brought my kids to the restaurant in the morning. I would feed them breakfast. They would finish up their homework. I would open the restaurant. I would get everybody in there, and I would shuttle them off to school. I would come back, and then the most that they would have to stay in, like, any kind of an aftercare, if at all, was literally a half an hour, right? So the hours worked out for my lifestyle because I wanted to
Be a mom.
I wanted to be a mom, and I wanted to own my own business. And so to do it in the breakfast space was absolutely like it was the perfect balance.
So when did the second location?
So the second happened 4 years later. And again, when I went into it, I had no idea that I was going to open more than one. I knew that I wanted the one. That was about it. And then it was a hit. And I thought, all right, let's see what else we can do. And I was looking all over northern New Jersey because I knew enough to know that I should be able to kick the tires. So I took very little vacation at that point in my life. But I happened to rent a friend's house down in Bradley Beach. And while I was down there, and I have 3 very lifelong friends, like college roommate kind of thing. So I was in Bradley Beach renting a house. I invited them down, my 3 friends, Jean Marie, Tammy, and Nicole. Actually, Nicole wasn't there, but Jean Marie and Tammy were. And I left the kids on the beach with my friends because I got a call from a friend of mine from Montclair, and she said, I'm not sure if you're interested, but I'm passing by this place in Asbury. I think it's an up-and-coming town again. You should go check it out. Literally left my kids on the beach with my friends, my college roommates, went and checked it out, and I walked in and I was like, oh my God, this is it. And I thought to myself, well, this will be great. It's seasonal, right? That's how I saw it. It'll be seasonal. I can have 1.5 restaurants. I can do this, right? Summers are a little bit slower in Montclair.
Kids are out of school.
Kids are out of school. We can rent a place down here. This will be perfect.
Give my family the full experience.
Yeah, so I called my dad, right? So, of course, because he was the person that, even if nothing else, and I never actually physically worked for my dad.
Yeah.
He was just always, like, in the back of my mind.
He was your CEO in a sense.
Yeah, he was, again, my dad was like my dad and my mentor, which I don't know that I appreciated as much as I did once I got older, right? When I was younger, 20s, 30s, it wasn't really dawning on me that he was actually both. But later on, I realized it. So I went over and I checked it out. I called my dad. He met me there the next day.
Hold on real quick. How important is mentors? Not just your dad, but mentors
So
in general.
interestingly enough, I didn't think, like, when I was in my 20s, I remember being in the fragrance industry, and my boss at that time was kind of shitty. I mean, it was kind of like Devil Wears Prada stuff. Like, I was getting phones thrown at me, and it was all because of, like, her disorganization. And she considered herself a mentor to so many, and it gave me a bad taste in my mouth of what mentorship really was, because she was more tyrannical than she was a mentor. Fast forward, I think mentoring is probably one of the most important things that you can have in your life, and you find them in very different ways. And people, especially for me, when I was in my 20s, I thought mentors always had to be older, always had to be,
Could be the same age. I have a mentor right now, the same age as me, Keaton Hoskins. He's
same age. They could be younger.
Yeah.
You just never know.
You got to be open-minded to that. Your ego has to be removed to deal with someone younger.
And I think the coolest thing about mentorship now is, and where I feel like I've organically become a mentor to a lot, you have to be, so this woman that I worked with, sorry, I'm babbling a little bit, it was like knowledge is power, and I'm not going to give any of it, because she wanted to feel the most important person, right?
Yeah, good leaders create other leaders.
And it's so true. And now, like, anybody who will listen, and that's usually my gauge as to know if somebody's really going to, like, has got it and is going to, like,
use it. You'll waste
and
your
knock
energy
it out
if
of
you
the
listen.
park.
Yeah.
If they immediately shut you down when you're trying to just give your experience, right then and there, you're like, this is going to be a problem.
I struggled with that because I struggled through so much and I battled through so much to get to success that I wanted to just, help and help and help. And I'm a truth teller. Like, I don't give a fuck what you think. I'm going to tell you what you don't want to hear about yourself to better your life, but you have to be willing to receive that.
And so many people are not.
They're not. So you have to wait for the right people.
Right. So you try, right? You hear people that are, talking. I'm like, listen, I have a PhD at this point in what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that is way more important than what to do sometimes. Mm-hmm. But if you're
limit the downside.
And you don't want suggestions too. Like, you don't want everybody to tell you how to run your business and what you should do. That is,
you should get this coffee and you should do this.
My ears shut like a gecko the minute somebody says what you should do. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But if you literally have experience that you're trying to give to somebody and they still kind of knock it down or don't return the call or ask and never.
You stop. You start to reserve that advice.
You're good, right?
Yeah.
I'm good. You're going to make your mistakes the way that you make them. And honestly, now at 51 years old, I realize that the people who are not willing to receive, they're usually out of business in 3 months to 3 years.
Ego is such a big thing. And all of us as young business owners.
Ego's brutal.
Yeah. And even an older business owner, you don't know what you don't know. A lot of business owners are stuck playing with the beepers when cell phones have been out for 5 years. And I mean social media, Toast is rocking, and you have a great social media yourself already, so kudos to you and whoever helps you with that. But, social media is a huge turbocharger to what you're doing in person. If you're not using it, you're falling behind.
No doubt. And that was something that, again, I didn't grow up with social media, right? So, and I was in the marketing world before social media existed. I was in the marketing world.
Different marketing world, though.
Oh, my gosh.
Same concepts of the
no
the
doubt. But I mean,
of it.
if you think about it, like print advertising and, scent strips, again, back to my fragrance world, scent strips were brand new when I was in the marketing world. The internet literally came in on my second job in the fragrance industry, and we were getting classes, and we were all blown away because we were doing market research where you had to go to a facility, have the one-way mirror, have people that you were coming in, trying your deodorant, your fine fragrances, your laundry detergent, whatever it was. You'd sit behind the glass as the client. That doesn't exist anymore, right?
Yeah.
There's no reason for that. You can reach thousands, millions of people by posting online.
One post is my elevator pitch to 30,000, 50,000, a million views.
It's crazy.
On a reel. Now, I took this story off track talking about mentorship, but you at the time said, hey, I'm going to go down to Asbury. I'm going to open this place up. It's going to be seasonal. What happened?
It blew up quick because what I don't think I realized was the cachet that the brand already had. The whole you are your brand, I was my brand.
Mm-hmm.
I am as
live
that
it,
was
breathe
the other
it,
thing.
eat
People ask me all the time, why were you successful and other people weren't? I'm I'm the most average woman I know. I will eat dirty water dogs. I will go fine dining. I can dress up. I can be super casual. There's 5 times a year that I look halfway decent. The other times I'm grinding. If I went to the gym that morning and I drove my kids to school, that's how I went to work. And people actually just could relate and appreciate it.
Yeah, relatability is a huge thing.
Huge. And the other thing is that knowing the owner, and even if you don't know the owner, you're feeling like you know the owner, and you realize that she just came from the Y because you saw her at the
They're
Y.
one of the same.
And you're in, right? Again, it's that you try, one person tries it, tells 2 people, and...
So what were you doing? Were you running between both restaurants as the owner?
I was. So I will tell you this. So it took me 4 years to open. So many people try to get to the next one so quickly. I didn't have any intention of opening the second restaurant, but when I look back at it, I barely had the infrastructure in 4 years. And then it was another 4 years until I opened in Red Bank. And again, I wouldn't have opened it at that time. I really didn't have that infrastructure yet. I was a one-woman show. I was running between both. I finally got a manager.
Was that a control freak issue or a lack of help or?
There's a lack of foresight that I needed that kind of infrastructure. I didn't know it until I opened the third.
You only have so much capacity.
You do. There's only so much you could do. And when I tell you, we talked off camera a little bit about cars and mileage. I used to put 240,000 miles on my car before I would get rid of it, and that would happen in 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
I was constantly in the car.
Running.
Garden State Parkway was, basically my home.
Yeah.
Made all my calls in the car, which was great. took my deep breaths in the car, cried in the car, had my mental breakdowns in the car. That's where I was. And, it's actually a pretty funny story. My daughter was in the back seat, and I didn't realize how much she was absorbing. And she's like 2 years old, and she's going through potty training, and she's in pull-ups, and all of a sudden she comes out. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse, but
You can do whatever you want.
the first time your kid curses, it's actually kind of funny.
Yeah, it
and
is.
she was holding a diaper, and apparently she'd been hearing a lot of my conversations in the car. And she came down and she used it perfectly, and she had a pull-up in her, and she's like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And because she had been apparently,
What the fuck?
She wanted help to do this for, and I guess I wasn't paying attention. And so, what are you fucking kidding me? I was like, all right, so I got to lock it up in the car. But so Red
Back and
Bank
forth.
happened a little bit too quickly again. But again, my dad passed away. That's how I wound up in Red Bank, because he actually owned that building.
How
with
many
his
years
partner.
ago was that?
9 years.
9 years.
Yep.
So you now have 3 locations in
Yep.
total. What is the future of Toast? And I think I didn't want to go a ton into, what's different about your place. I think you gave a lot of color on that.
Yeah.
And what you took from New England style breakfast place and brought that here to Jersey, North Jersey, as well as the shore. So I think people can quickly put together what your restaurant is about.
Yeah.
What is the future of Toast?
So growth for sure. Growth and an exit for me, to be honest.
Franchising?
Depends. It could be licensing. It could be more corporate stores. We're going to be opening our 4th store in September. We're in the
Cranford?
process. In Cranford, yep. That's breaking news, because nobody knows that yet.
Oh, Cranford. You heard it here first.
And we'll see. I took on a partner, a very strategic partner, about a year and 2 months ago. And he was kind of a mentor to me. And in all of our dealings back and forth, he came from a very large restaurant group, big corporate background. He had all the skill set to grow. He started with his former company when they were at 10 locations and built them to over 300.
What was that?
At Villa Restaurant Group.
Villa.
Yeah, so, and he always says, he would still, after 28 years at Villa, have to explain to people, who they were.
Yeah.
And when he started telling people who he was with Toast, no matter where he went, they were like, "Oh my God, we love Toast. The only problem is we can't get in."
Yeah, they
right?
know what it is.
So he was like, "Your brand recognition on 3 stores was amazing compared to that." So it brought him in, again, a very strategic partner. He's very different.
Brand
than-
is extremely important.
huge.
Yeah, and I think as small business owners, we overlook that. It's not the big swoosh of Nike or, the Under Armour sign. As small business owners, and you said you embody your brand. I embody Fireside America. I embody The Pit. I embody Ryan and Ryan's enterprise through and through, and I don't ever come off brand. And I think that as you do that over time, just like any other small thing that you're doing in your life, it compounds, especially with a brand.
Well,
Small or big.
Again, you are your brand, right? And it's I guess if you wear...
But a lot of people don't brand. And it doesn't mean they don't have success
No.
as a small business owner, but they don't have a brand.
And in my industry, again, so 16 years ago, there were not a lot of breakfast brunch places only, right? You had Jersey diners.
Which have gone away, really.
They are. And there's a reason, right? There's no more shift workers. So
Yeah.
you don't have those people that are getting off from printing newspapers at 4 a.m. that used to come into your place. And even hospitals, right? Hospital workers used to do 3 7-hours, or that wouldn't make sense, 3 8-hours. And so now there's only 12-hour shifts in a hospital, so you don't get
You
those
lose
shift
that.
workers. So it makes sense that there's no more 24-hour, or at least it's a dying breed. But I forget where I was going with this. Bring me back. Bring me back.
Yeah, well, we were talking about the
Oh, the
restaurant.
future of
yeah,
Toast.
and we were talking about Toast.
Yeah, so strategic partner of a guy who I know can grow it. So somebody wiser than me said, you did the magic trick. Going from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3,
It's the hardest.
it really is. So now we have the brand recognition. It's kind of in a box. We have to systemize, and we have to make sure that you get the same corned beef hash here in Asbury that you get in Red Bank, that you get in
Repeatable.
Montclair. Absolutely. But not being cookie cutter, because that's one thing that I want to avoid. I don't want to be a franchise. I see a lot of people out there that are doing it. It's just not for me. I think their food is mediocre at best. We're a scratch
Consistency.
kitchen.
the consistency starts to lack. It's hard across. Paul from Bubba has a great brand. Him and his partner, and they do an excellent job. And I am critical of Paul because he's critical of me. His at times stores consistencies lack.
Absolutely.
And Paul's
well,
the first.
I don't mean about Paul, but about my own.
Yeah, no, I'm saying about Paul, and what he self-admittedly says is, as it grows and it scales so fast, it's so hard. As much as you're trying, you just don't have enough time in a day. And you can hire staff and regional people, but it's not you.
Yeah, and it's funny because people think they're giving me a compliment. They're like, we had the corned beef hash here, like wherever they're seeing me, whichever location it is. It's so much better here. And I'm like, that is the last thing I want to hear.
Yeah.
I
hate my manager up there.
Well, and then think to myself, is it like your experience at the mountains? Are they having a different experience because it is a day off and they're at the beach?
It's a mind thing.
It is.
Times.
I mean, there's definitely some merit to that for sure.
Do you spend most of your time down here at the
Now
Outback?
I do. So
Yeah.
I spent my first 4 years exclusively in Montclair, and then I really was splitting my time pretty well. COVID to now, I'm mostly down here. I moved full-time to Bradley Beach, so I definitely spend more time down here. But, that's another, trick. How it's like the minute you let the gas off of one location, the cat's away. So you have to kind of visit it
Yeah.
multiple times a week. If not, it's going to fall by the wayside. And listen, nobody else is the owner.
Yep.
Right? They can take ownership. They're still not the owner.
Yeah. It's
So
not their baby.
It's not. And
Yep.
just like every nook and cranny of your baby's face, and you walk in and if they had the millimeter scratch on their face,
You recognize.
I can walk into the restaurant and be like, there's no powdered sugar on that. Why don't they have a spoon? Why is there dirt in that corner?
Yep.
Like, you just see it right away.
Well, you're doing an excellent job, and I think whatever you choose to do moving forward, franchises, licensing, or just opening, 15 more that are corporate stores, you, your team, your partner are going to have a tremendous amount of success.
Thank you.
I want to round this podcast out. I ask 2 questions always. The first question is, if there was any young woman, young man that's going into business ownership, entrepreneurship, what's the one thing that you would tell them? And please keep it short, because I don't need it to be, I want something that's impactful.
So this might be a little controversial. The first thing, this isn't the controversial part, patience and perseverance, right? That's really the only thing that's going to get you to at least your first store, because you can have a million ideas. I had 10 ideas before I opened Toast, and I never pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, and I think it's actually probably an unconventional way of thinking, especially for a lot of self-made people, my corporate experience was huge for me. And it was huge because I had to have accountability to other people, because once you're on your own, you need to be 1,000,000% self-motivated. You have no one else to answer to. So getting your ass up out of bed, you're the finance department, you're the marketing department, you're everything.
The self-accountability.
And
that's where a coach comes in, the Pit 2.0.
There you go. But if, again, 20 years ago, there wasn't a lot of life coaches out there.
Well, there wasn't virtual. I'm not a life coach. I'm
there wasn't a business coach. There wasn't an anything coach.
But yeah, the virtual world has allowed for a lot of that community and that virtual relationship.
And you didn't have that then. But I think a lot of the corporate structure that I got, because you need to be that. You can't be, a real company. And honestly, for the first 2 stores, I wasn't a real company. I was making money in spite of myself because I outworked a lot of people.
You were just working.
Yeah. My accounts, my books were probably
We did 2.
Okay.
We did 2 podcasts this week. Last night was another one, Roadley, and he's a young kid doing $30 million in a logistic company. It's just insane. And we talked about that same thing. He went 10 years in the freight brokerage space and learned every single system, learned every single part of the business, every single facet before he went and launched his own thing.
Yeah,
and I do agree
huge.
with that.
And you don't have, I wasn't in the restaurant business in the corporate world.
Yeah,
I was in fragrance. But
same
there was
template.
still structure. And again, there was filling out all these, expense reports and just, having accountability to somebody else.
EOS.
What's EOS?
EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System. It's actually, I don't know exactly how many entrepreneurs were the think tank of putting it together, but it's the entrepreneur system for the entrepreneur who never was in corporate America. It's something that myself and my team
That's
implemented.
huge.
It is everything, because a lot of times you're just flowing through. Although I am a numbers guy, I'm a money positioning guy, I'm a tax guy, I'm actually terrible on a spreadsheet. Because spreadsheets and money is not math, math is not money. I think it's actually irrelevant. It's more about the positioning of money and your tactics around it. But the accountability of tracking those numbers, going, hey, we didn't hit this. Well, what didn't we do? Who's accountable for that seat, right? Who's supposed to sit in that seat? Do they have the capacity to do it? Do they have the desire to do it? And it walks through that corporate structure that the entrepreneur usually lacks. But if you have the time and you have the desire to go into a corporate structure, I couldn't agree more. Me, I would have never made it. They would have fired me in 2 weeks.
I would have thought the same thing about myself, but I actually was fairly successful in it because
I was fired from Lowe's pretty quickly.
I was a worker, right? So, and that's really what they were looking for.
I was a big mouth.
I was definitely a big mouth. Actually, one of the best pieces of advice I don't know if it was advice for a dig. I had the gift of gab even back then, right? Like if I didn't do this, I should have been a lawyer because I could have argued myself out of a paper bag. And a guy who was in like the technical side, I was on the creative side. He said to me, in the middle of this back and forth, he looked at me and he goes, that listening is also a skill. And I left that day and I was like, ooh, that burned a little bit.
Yeah,
and
that motherfucker.
Oh, Bob Manzo.
I'm
I still
listen
remember
the
his
shit
name.
out of him next time.
Yep, Bob Manzo. And he was like, he came from Kodak. I was like, what the fuck do you know?
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm still talking about it 35 years later.
There was a crazy story about Kodak. Actually, I think Jake Cooperman brought that up. He wasn't on the podcast yet, but we'll get to that. But Kodak's whole story is really unique. But
check it out.
I'm getting off track.
Okay.
The second question I like to ask, or more of comments from you, give a shout out to 2 or 3 other business owners here locally. This whole podcast will always be predicated on giving the local business owners love. Are we going nationally? Absolutely. Is that going to continue to happen? Absolutely. It will always be about small business, though.
Yep.
And it would more importantly be about local. So give us some local love. Rattle off 2 or 3 business, restaurants, bars.
Oh, gosh. I should have thought about this because you do ask this at the end of every single show.
I do.
Well, we already talked about Freshticles, but they're not local. But you can talk about that later.
Freshticles.
Freshticles.
Make sure you get your Freshticles.
Exactly.
Make your testicles cool.
Cool your jewels. I can't believe I'm saying that on camera. So, Hair Love, believe it or not. There's a really small hair salon in Bradley Beach. Mm-hmm. And Liz is the owner, and this other girl, Anna, works there. And she did something that was pretty unique. She was a young, up-and-coming hairstylist that was working for like one of the largest salons in like Belmar, and she found this tiny little salon that like catered to like 70 plus, right? They were doing like roller sets, and she went in there and she bought the business. She kept a bunch of the older stylists on to continue with that clientele, but then brought in this like very, she was working in Asbury Park and doing everybody that had like the green and the blue hair, and she kept the 2 stylists on, and she created this amazing environment in Bradley Beach. And so Hair Love would be one. Her name is Liz Curry. And another one, let me think about this.
I know you love
Do you know
food.
Teak in
Red Bank?
In Red Bank?
Yep.
So Teak, and he also has Bistro. He's got a few other restaurants.
Greek guy?
Yeah, George.
Yeah.
And he's in business with 2 of his brothers, but man, that guy is like my brother from another mother. He is a grinder. Now,
I don't know. The Greeks always say that kind of like the Italians, the cousins. We know his cousin, Valentino Contos. He's another guy. He owns a steak joint. They own a bunch of construction. And
Gabrielle's, is that?
Not Gabrielle's,
Okay.
no. Steak place up in, what is it, Edison? Yeah.
They're all connected.
Yeah.
But George is a great guy, and like
They all hustle.
The way that I met George is actually an interesting story. So when I took over the Red Bank space, I was closing down a 24-hour diner. I'd never met George in my life, and social media.
Wait, hold on. Where is Toast in Red Bank?
It's the old Broadway diner.
So the silver thing?
Yeah.
Oh, so I actually have been to Toast.
Well, you haven't been there as Toast, so.
Yes, I have.
Really?
How many years ago did you open it?
8.
Absolutely been there.
All right, so
Me
you
and
have
Keith
been.
Mandel, he's one of my Amex reps. I've met there many times.
All right, so now you're off the hook.
Yep.
But when I took that over and
Now
was
take it
making it perfect, when I was making it into a Toast, the Red Bank green and
You
all
were
those.
making it a toast? You were making a toast or making it into a toast?
Making it into a toast. The town went
We
bananas.
should toast some things you have to celebrate. Another restaurant opening
I was
soon?
like, what are we talking about?
Another restaurant opening
Can
soon.
we just talk about that one thing?
No, another
So
restaurant.
I want to tell you, I want to finish how I met George. So all of a sudden, this guy, after like, there was literally like thousands of people bashing me on social media about how I was going to ruin the town, and I can't believe it's not going to be a 24-hour diner anymore. And you know, they didn't give a crap that it was because my dad
People don't
passed
like
away.
change.
They don't like change, and I you know, and I knew enough. Don't bite. Don't say anything. I don't know that I would take the same tactic now, but back then there was something wiser in me then. And I was like, don't say anything. All of a sudden, this guy came out and fired, like went bananas on everybody. They're like, she lost her dad. The diner, although it was nostalgic, it sucked. Blah, blah, blah. She's got an amazing place. Give her a break. And it was George. So then he came into the restaurant. We've been very good friends since, but that guy's got a work ethic like no other I've ever
It
seen.
takes a cool vibe. I mean, that whole upstairs thing to have, the garage doors.
Yeah, that's new or new-ish.
It is newish in the last 3 to 4
But
years.
he's
right?
been there forever. That guy should be the mayor of Red Bank because I've never seen anybody more passionate about doing business in a town like he is.
Yeah, we just had our business summit, the Pit 2.0. We throw all different various entrepreneur, business owner events, and we did our VIP dinner down in Buenos Aires, which is always
nice.
also a unique restaurant there, with that wine cellar, which is really cool. Red Bank is an awesome place. You live here down at the shore. For those of you who don't know, it's only 30 minutes north, and you feel like you're in a mini New York City to a degree.
We definitely do.
And Red Bank's another amazing place that you picked, along with Cranford.
Yep.
Amy, this has been awesome. Very easy conversation. Truly enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're going to do anything that you want to do. You're going to take Toast as far as you want to take it, you and your partner. I'm honored to have you. I'm going to go to Toast still this weekend in Asbury. But I have been there now.
This way you can actually like have it in the forefront of your brain.
Yeah, it's a little close to me.
Oh, right. I have been to Toast.
Cheers. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
It's been fun.
Thank you.